The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
This is a special edition of 17 News at Sunrise, your local election headquarters. Here's Maddie Jansen and Alex Fisher.
And good morning to you here at 5 a.m. Thanks for waking up with us. I'm Maddie Jansen alongside Alex Fisher. We do have a lot to get to this morning. And this morning, the country is waking up, still wondering what America's future will look like. Right now, ballots are still being counted, and many races are still too close to call.
And the balance of power looks as though it will shift to a Republican majority. And that means Bakersfield Congressman and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is closer than ever to becoming Speaker of the House.
When you wake up tomorrow, we will be in the majority, and Nancy Pelosi will be in the minority. Yeah!
And 17's political reporter Maddie Gannon is here this morning to break down McCarthy's quest to control the House and the other local races that you saw on your ballot. Good morning, Maddie.
Maddie, Alex, good morning. We're all waking up to a fresh set of results this morning. Numbers were last updated just after 2 a.m. in Kern County. But as we're going through all of this, we have to keep in mind these are still early results. By the same time this morning in the primary election, we had just 26% of the votes tallied. But we'll kick things off where we do have some finality. The AP is projecting Republican incumbent House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has won re-election against Democratic challenger Marisa Wood. McCarthy this morning with 68% of the vote to Wood's 32%. The significance here, as we were just talking about, McCarthy has just passed the first hurdle in his quest for the job he's long coveted, Speaker of the House. But the next step right now is still hanging in the balance. Republicans need to take a majority in the House of Representatives for McCarthy to get the Speaker's role. As of this morning, that hasn't happened yet. But one of the races that could help determine if it does is also right here in the Central Valley. That's the 22nd congressional race where Democratic Bakersfield Assemblyman Rudy Salas is looking to oust GOP incumbent David Valadao. This race widened fairly significantly overnight. Valadao holds the lead with 54% of the vote to Salas's 46%. This is a very good sign for Valadao if you break down the numbers even further. At this same time, the morning after the primary election, Salas led the pack with 48% of the vote. Valadao trailed with 26%. Of course, at this point, there were two other GOP candidates in the race. As more votes came in over the next few days, Salas's lead shrunk from 48% to 45%. Most of those votes went to Chris Matisse. That was one of those Republican challengers in the primary who cast himself as further to the right than Valadao. That may be a sign a lot of those votes coming in over the next few days in the primary were deep Republican voters. If these votes break the same way in the general, that is a good sign for Valadao. Let's move now to the state Senate. In the 12th Senate District, Republican incumbent Shannon Grove leading Democratic challenger first-time candidate Suzanne Gundy 69% to 31%. In the 16th State Senate District, all campaign season, this was considered a key pickup for Republicans. But Democrats in Sacramento poured thousands of dollars into keeping this seat. As of this morning, Republican political newcomer David Shepard is leading the Democratic incumbent here, Melissa Hurtado, with 53% of the vote to Hurtado's 47%. This is obviously a good result for Shepard's team, but there's also some reason for optimism for Hurtado here. 4 counties make up this district. The portion of Kern County in this district is by far the most Democrat dominant, and it's also the largest part of the district. Of the votes we have this morning, just 30% are coming from Kern. The majority are coming from Kings, Fresno, and Tulare counties, which are far less blue. We could see Hurtado close this gap as more of those votes from Kern come in. Now in the state assembly, we have 2 Democrats in this race, Kern County 5th District Supervisor Leticia Perez and Bakersfield Dr. Jasmeet Baines. This morning, Baines sitting in a solid lead with 59% of the vote to Perez's 41%. This is a stark contrast from where we were on primary election night. Perez had a huge lead with 61% of the vote to Baines's 39%. In the end, this ended up being the closest race on Kern's primary ballot, with just 289 votes separating the two. All right, lastly here, let's take a look at the 3rd District Supervisor race. Retiring 3rd District Supervisor Mike Maggard's Chief of Staff Jeff Flores barely leading retired CHP Assistant Chief Brian Smith. by just 28 votes, razor thin. And we spoke with both candidates last night.
The biggest message that I want to get across tonight is thank you to every single one of the people that put a sign in their yard. They donated money, they volunteered to walk for us. All those people that supported me, I just want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. It means everything, and I'm really excited that these people came out to help me.
Sometimes it takes weeks to finally get some closure. So I think when we see some subsequent returns and we see a trend, we'll get a better idea of how this race is going. But I'm going to say my prayers, I'm going to go to bed, I'm going to give thanks to God Almighty and wake up in the morning and see what happens.
Quite a bit of surprises this morning, and we will of course be monitoring all the changes as votes continue to come in over the next few days. In studio, Maddie Gannon, 17 News.
In the race for Bakersfield City Council Ward 7, we have 3 candidates looking to fill the seat left by Chris Parlier, stepping down due to health concerns. Those challengers vying for his seat are Manpreet Kaur, Tim Collins, and Raj Gill.
We're also tracking the latest in Ward 3 with challengers Boyd Benninger and Lonnie Daddow battling the incumbent Ken Weir for his seat. 17 News caught up with the candidates leading into the most recent results.
So here are the results for Ward 7. Manpreet Kaur is in the lead this morning with 55% of the vote. Collins is trailing behind with 37% of the vote, and Gill with 8% of the vote this morning. And Kaur says she is ready for her new role if declared the winner in this race.
My top priority is, 1, to meet with city staff, meet with my fellow new city council members, really get to know them, get a gist of the job ahead, and then start working on some of the things that we've been talking about on this campaign around neighborhood safety, around our parks, around infrastructure, and making sure the quality of life in Ward 7 is on the upward climb and we're thinking forward.
In Ward 3, incumbent Ken Weir is leading with 52%, and behind him is challenger Boyd Benninger with 33%, Lottie Daddow with 9%. Weir says he's optimistic about the lead and is looking forward to a potential next term.
The people at Bakersfield and in the 3rd Ward have been so kind and so generous, and you know, I talk to people on the phone and they're just amazing. I talked to a 92-year-old lady and she said, "Oh, Ken, I'm glad to hear from you, and if you have another event or something, please call me. My husband's been kind of sick, but we'll try to show up there." And I'm going, oh my gosh, that's just awesome, you know, that people react like that. So I'm pretty happy about that, and I'm looking forward to the next 4 years.
Meantime, there are a number of local ballot measures before voters in Kern County in this midterm election. We begin with Measure K, which would enact a 1-cent sales tax increase for unincorporated areas of Kern County. So let's take a look at the numbers. So far, 51% of voters are saying yes to this measure, 49% saying no. And if Measure K is passed, it is expected to bring in about $50 million of extra revenue for the county. All of that will stay in Kern. And Sheriff Donnie Youngblood says this measure is crucial in sustaining public safety. Meantime, the city of Tehachapi also had a 1-cent sales tax increase on the ballot called Measure S. So far, this measure is passing with 54% of the vote. And Measure M is also a 1-cent sales tax increase for the city of McFarland. And right now, if we can go to that one, you can see here 65% of voters saying yes to the city of McFarland sales tax increase.
One measure on your ballot this year could impact term limits for county supervisors. Let's take a look at Measure J. If passed, it would limit supervisors to a maximum of 2 4-year terms. So far, here are the votes. 71% voting to pass the term limit measure, 29% voting no. And now to Measure L, a yes vote supports amending the Bakersfield City Charter to remove the requirement that the fire chief and police chief be appointed from within their respective departments. So far, this morning, this one very close, almost evenly split there with yes votes just barely coming out ahead. Turning now to Measure O, known as the cannabis business tax for the city of McFarland. If passed, it would enact a tax on marijuana businesses of up to $10 per square foot for cultivation. And so far this morning, this one has 64% saying yes to Measure O, 36% no.
Let's take a look at some of the major races here in Kern County that could have an impact on the balance of power in Congress.
So we begin with the 20th district. The AP projecting Republican incumbent House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has won re-election against his Democratic challenger Marisa Wood. McCarthy this morning was 68% of the vote to Wood's 32%. And despite not seeing an immediate Republican wave across the country as expected, McCarthy says he still expects the GOP to take control of the House, putting him in line for the speakership.
The American people are ready for a majority that will offer a new direction, that will put America back on track. Republicans are ready to deliver it. It's a new direction towards an economy that is strong, where you can fill up your tank.
All right, let's go to the 22nd congressional race now in one of the most competitive House races in the nation. Republican incumbent David Valadao in this early count leading Bakersfield Assemblyman Democrat Rudy Salas. Valadao right now with 54% of the vote to Salas's 46%. And this is one of the most competitive House races in the nation that could help determine which party has a majority in the House next year. Valadao last night talked about bringing more water to the valley as one of his priorities.
Yeah, my goal is to continue to work on that. I mean, obviously we've had some successes over the last few years with legislation like the WIN Act. Hopefully we were able to get the opportunity to do some more. And then obviously if Kevin McCarthy is our speaker, which I do believe he'll be the speaker, it'll put us in a position where we can have someone from the valley helping to negotiate those deals, and it'll put us in a really good spot.
And Salas, a Democrat running in this district that was recently redrawn to lean more heavily blue, spoke to supporters last night in Bakersfield.
At the end of the day, this is about us. This is about our community. This is about our families. This is about making a difference for everyone.
Now to the state assembly, we have two Democrats in this race, Kern County 5th District Supervisor Leticia Perez and Bakersfield Dr. Jasmeet Baines. This morning, Baines is coming out ahead with 59% of the vote so far, 41% going to Leticia Perez. We caught up with Perez last night.
So, you know, obviously, no one likes to be behind on your first dump. That's not fun. But certainly it's early, and we're seeing all over the country that, you know, numbers are going all over. And so we remain optimistic.
And then moving on to the race for the 3rd District Supervisor on Kern County's Board of Supervisors. And this is the contest to replace Supervisor Mike Maggard, who is retiring. In this early tally, Maggard's Chief of Staff, Jeff Flores, barely leading retired CHP Assistant Chief Brian Smith with, it is neck and neck. The only difference here, 28 votes.
Wow, very close in a lot of these races still. And many states nationwide have seen record-breaking turnout for a midterm election. Here in Kern County, we're still waiting to see how many voters turned in a ballot, but some early numbers can give us an indication. Yeah,
17's political reporter Maddie Gannon is in studio this morning with more to break it down. A busy season coming to an end, but it is really interesting to see these numbers.
It is. And in the primary, Kern County had one of the lowest turnouts in the state, just 26% of registered voters turning in a ballot. By the same time, the morning after the primary election, Kern County Registrar of Voters Mary Bedard says we had just over 30,000 ballots counted. In the end, 113,560 people turned in a ballot in Kern County in the primary election. To get an idea of how many ballots the election department has counted this morning, we're looking at the number of people who voted in the governor's race. We're using this as an indicator because this race appears on every Kern County ballot, and most people who vote in a midterm election vote in the governor's contest. So as of this morning, 56,643 people in Kern County voted in this race. 56,000 ballots is just under double the 30,000 we had in the primary at this time. So it could be a good sign turnout has improved this time around.
Yeah, definitely some interesting numbers. I got to ask you, because we're also watching what's happening across the nation. This morning we're waking up, it's still too close to call on who is going to take control of the House. It is still expected that Republicans will gain control, but many analysts and lawmakers were actually expecting this overwhelming red wave. We're already hearing from some lawmakers, Senator Lindsey Graham, saying it was disappointing to see that it was not a red wave. What happened?
Well, exactly. And as we know, it's typical in midterm elections. The party in control of the White House, in this case, Democrats under President Joe Biden, lose seats in a midterm election. So, we were expecting that this year, coupled with 40-year high inflation, high crime rates under Democrat control in Washington led many analysts to predict we were going to see this red wave. At this point, we don't know what happened. It could be in part the Dobbs decision has still kept Democrats energized, but we just haven't seen this red wave that we thought we were going to see.
Obviously, though, if Republicans do take control of the House, which, again, they are still expected to do just by not as wide of a margin, this has a lot of significance for our own Republican Congressman Kevin McCarthy. He's the leader right now of the minority in the House. This would put him in line for the speakership.
Absolutely. And, it's really been his job to try to lead Republicans in taking back the House. He's been traveling the country this election cycle, trying to get those GOP candidates elected, trying to flip competitive House seats. A year ago, he predicted the Republicans would flip 60 House seats, as many as 60. We obviously have not seen that. Yesterday, he predicted 20 House seats would be a red wave. We haven't seen that as well. And this could be really significant for his speakership vote, because if he has just a small margin in the House, he might have to work harder to make sure he has enough votes to get that speaker's role. Yeah, it sounds like a lot like 2020. We're going to have to wait and see what happens. A lot of these races, again, too close to call. 17 political reporter Maddie Gannon, thanks so much. Thanks, you guys. Good morning.
All right, well, in the months leading up to the election, we covered issues of election security extensively, from signature verification to dead people voting. We looked into it all.
But on the big night, some of those concerns were nowhere to be found. 17's Chris Burton rejoins us with more this morning. Chris?
Well, Alex, Maddie, from an election security standpoint, the big story of the night seemed to be a single ballot box in Northwest Bakersfield. Take a look.
It was full, and I called the news, and this is not okay.
So this ballot box on Brimhall Road was so stuffed full of ballots that voters couldn't fit theirs in. Election officials arrived shortly after receiving word and gathered those ballots. But those complaints that we've been looking into about shoddy voting machines, voter fraud, they were much quieter last night than in elections past.
We have not seen, in this election what we were seeing in the recall or in the primary. So I don't know if that means that people are getting more comfortable with the security issues, and as we're able to explain that to them. But yeah, we are seeing that there just doesn't seem to be that big of a concern this time.
And that has been the word from the Observer side as well. Vince Mayoko, who is the head of the Election Integrity Project, which is the organization raising some of those concerns in the past, told us he visited 5 Kern polling sites last night, and he said nothing he saw raised any pressing concerns. Now, of course, the signature verification process is an ongoing process as ballots continue to be counted, and a handful of complaints arose about that process in the primary and last year's recall. But for now, claims of fraud seem to be quieting down. In studio, Chris Burton, 17 News.
Results continue to roll in this morning as Democrats try to maintain control of Congress. But with razor-thin margins in some races, it could be days or even weeks before we have full results.
Bree Jackson is in Washington this morning with the very latest.
Control of the House and Senate remains up in the air this morning as both parties pick up crucial wins. In Pennsylvania, voters elected Democrat John Fetterman to fill the seat of a retiring Republican.
I'll be the next U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania.
It was a big night for Democrats in the Keystone State as Josh Shapiro won his bid for governor.
Truth won right here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
In a neighboring state, Ohio, Trump-backed Republican J.D. Vance won a highly competitive race.
We've had a good night in the Ohio Republican Party, haven't we? Wow.
Although it was not the red wave that some predicted this midterm, Democrats outperformed during an election cycle that historically does not favor the party in power. In the House, Virginia's Abigail Spanberger retained her seat in a race widely considered a litmus test for how Democrats would fare in swing districts.
We must recommit ourselves to the cause of our country.
With votes still being counted, Republicans believe they'll secure enough seats to flip control of the House.
We will be in the majority, and Nancy Pelosi will be in the minority.
Some races are too close to call. In Georgia, incumbent Governor Brian Kemp emerged victorious.
It looks like the reports of my political death have been greatly exaggerated.
But the battle for Georgia's U.S. Senate seat remains in the balance.
We are not sure if this journey is over. Just hang in there a little bit longer.
As does the balance of power in Washington. President Biden made calls to congratulate winning Democrats, and we do expect to hear from the president in some form later today. In Washington, I'm Bree Jackson for NBC News.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.